Good evening, everyone. Talking shop with Outlier Firefighters. I'm your host, Alex Tanner, and thank you, Chief Rhodes, for coming on. I've got Chief David Rhodes, editor in chief of Fire Engineering. We go through your whole history here in the beginning, but Chief, I really do appreciate you coming on. I'm really excited for the conversation. It's been a hiatus for me here, so I'm looking forward
Yeah,
to it.
long time coming.
Yeah. We've met a handful of times in person, and it's cool to put this all together again. So we're just going to get right into it and start talking. So the first thing, I know you've come through, fire service, and I don't know if I've ever really heard like your true origin of where you were first exposed to the fire service, as a kid or whenever it was. How did you find the fire service?
So probably the TV show Emergency was my original exposure. Uh, Watching that as a kid, and then even when it was in syndication, that was something that was on every afternoon when you got home from school. So it was an everyday thing. When I was little, I would go reenact the rescues um, with my authentic plastic emergency uh, helmet, and my dad had worked um, for the phone company, and he had some old ladder belts, and of course they didn't fit, but I'd hang them over my shoulder and you know enact enact rescues off the tire swing or whatever it was with my neighbors. And then when I got out of high school, I was working for a land surveyor, and had been for several years, like summer job and then after school job. And I was kind of in that transition that summer. It was, I guess I worked there from like the summer of 84 through the summer of 85. And then I was like, all right, I need to figure out what I'm going to do. And I had been thinking about the fire department, and lo and behold, the fire chief walked in to get a job done. And we sat there and talked. I had thought about maybe doing paramedic school. Again, that was probably the emergency influence squad 51. And so he was telling me that they were one of the few departments in the state at the time that required EMT, and that if I wanted to, I could come sign up to volunteer, and they would send me to EMT school, and I wouldn't have to pay for it. And as a kid making, 650 an hour at the time, I thought that sounded pretty good. So I went and signed up that afternoon, and I think that was like midweek Wednesday or so, and I met a guy named Joel Yoder, who was a lieutenant, and he said, "Hey, if you're not doing anything Saturday, we're burning a house for a training fire." So I showed up Saturday morning, got my turnout gear, and rode in the truck down with him, and we participated in a state live fire burn in an old farmhouse. And the first time I ever went in to anything and had gear or air pack on or anything, it flashed over, and the guy on the nozzle panicked and fell on top of the nozzle. And he was a very large guy. His nickname was Biggin, if that tells you anything. And so I watched him and Lieutenant Yoder, Joel, wrestle around for the nozzle as I was laying on the ground, looking at all the fire over my head and roasting. And Joel got the nozzle, hit the fire, and knocked it down. And luckily, it was really tall ceilings, so we were in a good spot. And once he knocked it down, he looked at me and he said, "Get this guy out." And so, without having any training or anything, I immediately knew that my 135-pound self could not pull the guy out alone. So I got the guy behind me to help. We grabbed his BA straps and pulled him out, and put him on a stretcher. He was burnt, second and third degree burns, and they hauled him off in an ambulance. And after that, I was like, I want to be a firefighter. I don't care about EMT school. So I still went and I got certified, but that hooked me as a firefighter, and I never looked back.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's incredible. That
Baptism by fire.
yeah, like your
Um,
first experience ever was all of that. Wow, that's
yep.
incredible.
And when we did the critique, we had a little huddle, and it was a typical academy class. Five guys on the line, go in, knock it down, come back, rotate, go in again. Pallet fire, but it was a wood frame with that wood pine paneling that was varnished, and all that brown stuff was dripping all over the place. So while he's critiquing me or critiquing the group, my ears are throbbing, and I'm watching him come out of all this stuff, and he took this thing off of his head. And after he finished talking, I asked him what it was, and he goes, "My helmet?" And I said, "No, the cloth thing." And he said, "Oh, that's a Nomex hood." And he said, "Why you ask?" And then I said, "What's it for?" And he goes, "Well, it's to protect your face, your side of your face, and your ears." And then he goes, "Damn, son." And in a typical old fashion, he reached over there and said to the blisters on my ears, which was delightful.
Yeah.
And I could feel my pulse in my ears for a while. But when we got back after I mean, I continued on, went through another 3 or 4 rotations, and loved it. And we got back to the station. He told me to come over to his locker, and he reached up and he found a spare hood and tossed it to me, kind of like Mean Joe Green and
Yeah, right.
in the Coke commercial.
So how long from that till you were, on the fire department?
I got hired 2 months later.
Wow.
Yeah, so I started volunteering like September-ish, and then got hired like November, December.
Wow. That's an incredible story. Being people go careers without having to do all of that, and
Yep.
you right in the threshold, before the threshold.
And I was 18. Uh, yeah, I was 18, and I was still living at home, and my mom especially was pretty strict about, what I did and all. They had no clue what I was doing. And I remember laying on the floor of that house, seeing that fire just slowly churn over my head, thinking, if I live, my mom is going to kill me when she finds out what I'm doing. But they didn't. They didn't ever know that it happened, and they were very supportive once I told them what I was going to do. So
Yeah.
that was the beginning, and still friends with Joel Yoder to this day. I've probably taught 1,500 classes with the guy over the last 35, 40 years.
That's awesome. To have a relationship last that long in any form is amazing. But I mean, even part of the job and with that connection, that's quite a story.
Yep.
So from there, where'd you go? What you got your first apartment? You kind of made things happen, and how did you
Yeah.
progress then through your career?
So that was a very small one station department out east of the city, was Conyers, Georgia. Very unique place. Everybody there, officer wise, was an instructor with the state. There was unlimited training time. You could no class was ever denied if you signed up for it. Didn't matter what it was, where it was. You could go to it. You didn't have to come back in on shift. It was, if you were off for training, you were off until the class was over. So they were very supportive there. So they created that training culture, which was a very early, indoctrination into that. And we're there from, I was there from 85 until July of 90. And we had a consolidation with the county fire department, Rockdale County Fire Department. And with most consolidations, there's always a loser, and it's usually the small department. And so I think I took about a $6,000 a year pay cut in the transition, and lost thousands of hours of sick leave, because the caps were different. We had to wait 6 months to participate in their pension. Well, basically, we got treated like brand new employees. They just guaranteed us a job. We even had to fill out an application.
Wow.
And go over. But just there were a lot of really great people that were there. Still, some of those people are friends to this day. But it was a different vibe there. There wasn't so much emphasis on training. It wasn't as close of a network. And when you go from a a station with 5 or 6 people running 5 or 6 calls a day to being out. And this was a city department I was with, but it's a small, a small city. And then you got out into the like rural part of the county. So it was just like me and one other person at a station. And the call volume where I went was like, I think I may have ran 6 or 7 calls in the first 6 months.
Oh,
I mean, it was nothing. And so it was just bored. Well, I was so bored that I volunteered to be the fill-in man, which got me to headquarters where there was more people. There was a ladder truck and an engine, but I know I didn't really have a home. So I was either working there or filling in somewhere. But I liked that better than just being stuck at that one place. But I was only there from July of 90 to January of 92. So just a little over a year
sure.
and a half. So I went to Atlanta, and of course, you have to start over. So I went back to recruit school, and went through that whole deal, and then did almost 30 years at Atlanta, um, and was a firefighter, a driver, a lieutenant, a captain, and battalion chief. And when I left, I had been a battalion chief 17 years.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's a great. I mean, the stories of people going through, maybe an organization that wasn't meeting their needs, and then finding the courage to leave and find something that makes more sense. I feel like that's more prevalent now. The stories are maybe they're just talked about a little bit more, but I mean, how different your life would have been had you not done something
Oh
like
yeah,
that, right? And
yeah.
made that
And if
move.
I hadn't have, yeah, if I had, and I'm glad that it worked the way it did because knowing the Atlanta system now, looking back, I wouldn't have received the foundation and training that I got from the other department. So it was good to have all that training and then go put it to use versus just getting the minimum, and then obviously you get experience,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't trade any of it. Um, it was a perfect scenario. I could have retired about 7 years earlier had I gone to Atlanta first, but I was still able, you know, to retire at 54 and a half. So
Yeah, and like you
not
said, I
bad.
mean, no, not bad at all. Sometimes it just makes sense, right? Like
Yeah.
the place that you come from really gives you a lot, and yeah, I love what that you said. You got the training, and then you found a place where you could really use it, and actually, you know, you're getting the experience. That's obvious, but some of those entry level departments or the first places a lot of people work, I love hearing those stories, and a lot of people go through that same thing. That first volunteer or paid on call department. I'm one of those people for sure, and a lot of my friends are that got a ton of experience and training through those places, and
Yeah.
it's awesome that they exist and they continue to exist in some form.
And if we hadn't have consolidated, I probably would have ended up staying there.
Yeah.
And all the other stuff wouldn't have happened.
You feel
So,
like before the consolidation, like, do you feel like you were being fed, like you weren't
oh yeah,
hungry, right? Like you,
100%.
yeah,
And there were plans to open a second station, and they were going to create 3 more lieutenants, and I would have been right in that realm,
yeah,
So, but the pay, the benefits, the retirement is just so much better at Atlanta, and then I mean the things that opened the doors for that were just unbelievable. I mean, getting to do special ops, being the special ops chief, and then the types of calls that you run in the urban environment are just so different. I mean, a fire is a fire in a house, or a single family, or maybe even apartment. But when you start talking about mid-rise commercial buildings, and then the volume of calls, then the technical rescue. I mean, it's insane of the types of things that you encounter. It's different, and of course, it's a higher volume. So,
yeah,
so you get to do your craft enough to experiment, fail, recover, and then do it better the next time. And you're not waiting a year to do it. You're waiting like a week.
Yeah, yeah. You're constantly getting to basically
Yeah.
check everything that you're learning. Uh,
Yeah.
were you ever a training officer in throughout all
No.
that? No, that never was a
Not
thing.
not officially. I was
Okay.
always an instructor,
Yeah.
and I taught for the State Fire Academy for 25, 30 years, but never on the department as a designated training staff. I tried one time, but
Yeah.
there was I was union president at the time, and I had made lieutenant, and my punishment for being union president was a 40-hour lieutenant spot in inspections. And so I volunteered to go to the training academy. There were no certified training instructors at the academy at the time,
Wow.
and it was all lieutenants, maybe one captain, and none of them had been through like the state curriculum for training officer. So I talked to the training officer, volunteered. He was 100% on board. He had some ticks with the chief, kind of, and he went to the chief and told him he wanted me. And the chief was like, no, because he wanted me at headquarters as the union president. So I would be too busy to do union stuff. So he came back and apologized. He goes, hey, man, I tried, but it's not going to happen. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, well, but what's interesting though, and I mean, I know a little bit more obviously about your background, and maybe some other people that are listening might not quite know, but where you've ended up in terms of your influence over training, not just with Georgia Smoke Divers, but now FDIC. Like, it's funny how maybe that door didn't quite open and you weren't able to go through it, but the other things that you got to do, I mean, that's why I asked. I was curious. I didn't
Yeah.
know if you'd ever been a training officer.
Nope. Nope. Just always in other capacities, and then running my own, consulting and training, over the years. So, yep, never official.
You're a Fools member too, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So finding maybe an avenue through that too.
Yep, that wasn't around. That wasn't around in big numbers like it is now
Yeah.
back in my time. But it started getting popular probably late 90s around Georgia. Now, I knew the guys through FDIC that founded it and all, but yeah, it started kind of picking up in Georgia and pretty very active in Georgia now. I'm actually a member of the 575 chapter of the Fools.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yep.
So I know you talked about Joel. Were there any other people early in your career that gave you a ton of influence that set you up for the rest of your career?
Yeah. All of the officers there at Conyers, gosh, every single one of them. There was two officers on every shift, and Eddie White, Dewey Collins, Mike Lee, who's since passed away, Bucky Everson, Bob Cooley, Joe Blassingame, who's passed away, and of course Joel Yoder, and then Tom Hudgens was another one I actually recently wrote about, the unexpected influences of a Renaissance man. He passed away right before I started with fire engineering full time. So all of those guys were heavy influences. And then when I went to Smoke Divers, I met Scott Millsap, and he was probably the biggest influence ever in my career. Not only as a mentor instructor, but we became very close friends. And he was about 10 years older than me, and we did everything. I mean, we taught together, we traveled, teaching together for the fire academy, and he was just an unbelievable personality, and he was the guy that you're like, man, I want to be like that. And I never would be like that because he was about 5'8" and about as wide as he was tall, like a bulldog strong, big weightlifter dude. And I was a little skinny dude all the time. But he just had this ability to motivate, and he was so dedicated and just smart. I mean, he was into all of it. He did SWAT. He was a paramedic. He did hazmat, and he was just one hell of a firefighter. And he was the training officer at the Dalton Fire Department. They had a really strong group there that participated in smoke divers, and that's where we actually have the class now. So
Okay.
that legacy still carries on. But yeah, he was a huge influence, and he passed away from thyroid cancer um, 21 years ago, 22 years ago now. So, and he's the one that introduced me to FDIC. Um, and then he left the fire service probably 5 years or so before he passed away and started his own training company. And then I worked for that training company too. And we did industry training, fire brigade, confined space standbys, all the stuff that a typical, training company and standby company would do.
Yeah, and you just kind of toured around and gave those
Yep.
lessons essentially. Yeah.
Yep. And we did a lot of work for, industry. So we would go and do standbys for confined space work as the rescue team.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of mill inspections and fire protection. We'd go through and look and tell them, your hose is dry rotted. You got too much lint in your in your ceiling. Some of that preventative type stuff. And then we did fire brigade training, high angle rescue, confined space, hazmat. We did it all, whatever they needed.
Yeah.
And then he pulled me in. He was really close with Bill Manning, who was the editor of fire engineering,
Yeah.
and then we were part of the very first hot um, classes at FDIC in Indy. So we were one of the groups that taught in the parking lot the first year when it was Hot Tuesday, and then that evolved into Hot Monday and Tuesday, and then we went off site. We ended up going to Pike Township, and we did high angle rope and confined space, and then another guy in our group, Mo Baxter, taught the Axioms of Leadership class, which was based off of the Crucible at Paris Island for the Marine Corps, but it was all fire related. But it was the same type of obstacles you had to navigate, and there was always a leadership lesson at the end. So at one time we had 3 hot classes going with our little group.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's a workload and a half, but
Yep.
I I mean, I would imagine the early phases of FDIC, like that's what it had to be, right? You
Yep.
were making it happen with as much as, you had.
And that was probably 97, somewhere around there. And obviously through Scott met Bill Manning, and then we had the big mill fire and the helicopter rescue with Matt Mosley hanging off the static line, rescuing the guy off the crane, which led to my first article, because Bill contacted Scott, who contacted me, and he wanted me to write up that incident. So I had 2 articles in one magazine. I had the article about the fire, and then I had an article about the rescue, and then that led to us doing the keynote at FDIC the following year, which I think was either April 2000 or April 99. And the keynotes were an hour long back then.
Wow.
And so we had a full media production. We had video, music, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, because now they're what, like a half hour, I want to say?
20
Right?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, that's a lot of time to fill. But I mean, I guess in your case for that, like it was an incident, so there's a little
Yeah.
bit more,
And we talked about what happened after the fire because again, I was union president at that time, so it was all the political power we got after that fire and how we used it to get all the fire apparatus replaced, all new breathing apparatus, $2,000 bonus. I mean, we played the cards right during
Yeah.
that time. So it was all about what happened, what had happened before the incident, and then what happened after the incident, which was about a 3-4 year story
Yeah.
about how things transpired.
From writing that, what obviously like writing about an incident that happens, those things kind of flow, I think, a little bit, maybe not easier, but I don't, maybe just the abstract thought that comes behind maybe writing like some of the editorials you do now. As you grew as a writer, how did that shift kind of happen? Did anybody help you along the way about changing how you write or developing your skills as a writer, or is it just a thing that came out of you?
No, I pretty much just write like I talk, which is sometimes said you're not supposed to do, but I write like I talk and think, and lucky for me, it connected with the readers, and so there was, I got asked to keep writing, and I don't know how many articles I've done for fire, a combination of fire engineering, fire rescue when we fire engineering owned fire rescue too. So I had a monthly column in there for probably 2 or 3 years. And then blog posts were real big for a while, so I
Yeah.
would do some of those. And no, like I mean, the biggest thing was you're a little scared at first because you think that what you turn in needs to be a finished product. And you're like, hey, I don't know the laws of the English language when to use a hyphen or a semicolon or whatever. I just write. I use commas and periods, and they're not all, the periods are usually pretty good, but the commas are probably not always in the right place. But that's what a copy editor's for. And, Diane Feldman, now Rothschild, it was Feldman back in those days, would edit my articles, and I would get them back to look at, and they still looked the same to me, but they were like dressed up and squared away,
Yeah.
and still the same to this day. I'm probably better now than I was then just because I read so much. You pick up
Yeah.
a lot, but I am not a grammar guy at all. I mean, I think Diane really enjoys being able to hack up and insert hyphens and all that stuff. And that's her calling. I mean, that's her. So she loves it.
Well, I
And she
think,
makes us all look good.
yeah, I mean, and writing like you talk, I think lends itself to, trade magazine of any kind, right? Because it's raw, like it's speaking pretty much the same jargon in a form, right? So,
Hmm.
I mean, firemen are getting, I think, better at reading, like a lot more, but with the influence that's kind of been happening, and we're going to talk, about kind of like the state of the fire service and how things are going in a little bit, but like, um, I think that lends itself though to a magazine. It allows a fireman to pick it up that doesn't read a lot, and it feels like you're just having one of those conversations. So it's cool to hear that's kind of the way that you approach that and the way
Yeah.
that you write. And
Yeah.
I would imagine a lot of people are probably like that, just given reading the magazine. So that's a good thing to hear.
Yep. It's been good. I'm enjoying it.
That's good. I mean, you have to, right? Otherwise, why do anything
Yep.
if you don't enjoy it? So
And the first time that I really knew that things were connecting, I mean, I always would get, you know, somebody would say, "Hey, I saw your search article," or "I saw this article." But when I did the Hump Day SOS series for fire rescue, I really, and of course that was the time social media kind of was getting going pretty hot and heavy, and so I was getting a lot of feedback. And I remember I went out to Wichita Hot years ago, and they took me by a station, and I went the station to use the bathroom, and one of my articles was taped up in the over the urinal. I was like, I've arrived.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's got to be a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah.
Uh, I, Crew First Culture, Jeremy Sanders. He's he's got stickers and merch and stuff, and one of his stickers is on a locker in one of our bathrooms at the station. I take a picture and send it to him, and he's like, "That's the coolest feeling ever, just to know
And the
it's."
great thing about a sticker on a locker in the station, it'll be there 50 years.
The guy who originally put it, it's not his locker anymore. He's far from it. He's way at a different station, and yeah, it'll never come off.
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought that was a pretty cool parallel. It's got to
There's
be a
a bumper sticker from like the 80s at I think it's still there unless they may have painted the lockers. But at Station 1 it was there, and it said when I'm not fighting fire, I'm reading fire engineering. And it was something they gave away, back in the 80s.
yeah. Yeah, and those things just become these weird collages of like a time capsule. And
Yep.
yeah, you hope that stuff like that stays when they renovate or whatever they end up doing. There's a way to cut the piece of metal out of the locker or something. But
Yeah.
so I'm gonna get into like the topics for you, and one of the things, I mean, the first one right here is loyal disobedience, and when I heard you speak on this, and the keynotes that you've given, and just the speeches in general that you've given, they've always resonated. Even the one that you gave about the nuts and bolts with Georgia Smoke Divers at Firemanship this year, or last year, I should say, and loyal disobedience kind of hit like a nerve, probably for most firefighters, to be honest with you. And it was kind of that balance. And maybe if you could explain that to people that hadn't heard of where you were coming from with that. So I'd rather have it in your words than my words. So
Yeah. So that was something that Bobby Halton sort of bestowed on me when, gosh, I guess I worked with him for 18 years. I was actually doing FDIC before Bobby, so that was in the Bill Manning days. And then Bobby came along. I was already doing the hot training logistics and the hot program management. And so he came along, and then we became very close. And then as the years went by, as I was getting close to retiring, and he started asking me about if I was interested in, maybe taking his place. And that was probably 3 years before he passed away. So maybe a little longer than that. So it kind of been talked about, and I didn't really ever take it too serious because I was still working at the firehouse and stuff. So he said, "Yeah, maybe when you retire, you'll take my place and that." So that was kind of in the back of my mind. And so then I retired, and it got a little more serious talk. And he said, "Well, look, I'm going to bring you on as our fire rescue subject matter expert, and you're going to take some of the day-to-day load off of me with the magazine. I'm going to focus more on FDIC." And and I was like, okay. So I asked him one day, I was like, so out of all the people and deal with, why me? Like, why do you want me to do this and all? And he said, well, because of your loyal disobedience. And I'd never heard that before. And it's a term, it's been around a while. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, your strong character keeps you loyal to the fire service and the fire service mission, but you're disobedient to the bureaucracy of the institutions to the point to keep them honest. And he said, I'm sure you're not a guy that's been in a ton of trouble or whatever, which I hadn't. There's few major incidents that were all political type, retributions and stuff. But as far as, being the guy that's getting disciplined at work for not being there on time or doing stupid stuff, none of that. All the stuff that I had was purely retaliation, political type stuff. So I was like, yeah, it's kind of like you're a rebel with a cause kind of thing. And it's for good. It's not an insult at all. It's a compliment, I think. And it basically says you're somebody who's not afraid to stand up to power if you feel they're not doing the right thing. And it doesn't mean that you're screaming and shouting all the time, or it doesn't mean that you're telling them they're stupid. It's just that you're not conforming and being a puppet or a bobblehead or whatever. You'll speak up in a staff meeting. You'll always carry out the orders that you're given, but you're always questioning, and trying to stay focused on the mission. So he liked that. I guess he was like that too. I mean, obviously
yeah,
he had that in him. So yeah, I think that was a term that described me very well.
yeah. I mean, I think that spirit's now carrying over a little more widespread in the fire service with the things that everyone's trying to do and collaborate now to change. Whether it's 2 and 2 out or whatever. It seems like that loyalty to like what we're supposed to represent now is the loudest voice where it wasn't always the loudest voice. And I
Right.
haven't been in the career that long, um, but I feel like we're in kind of that turning point where that's becoming more commonplace, where people are getting those opportunities and their voice is carrying out, and
Yeah.
it kind of plays into my next topic that would be like the suffering that kind of comes with passion for the job or for the fire service. And I think that goes hand in hand with that disobedience. Your talk of the t-shirt management or
Hmm.
other things of that nature. Living through some of that suffering, what are some things people can do to stay true and not fall off, but I guess learn to live with that or move through it.
Hmm. Yeah, I think I was very fortunate that I had one set of circumstances within the department, but then I had so much positive outside of the department that I had always had a huge support network. And, it's tough to stand up by yourself sometimes and address some of these topics internally. But when you have a support network that they're doing the same thing in their department, or you got a couple of folks, like maybe even through the union, at least, your union is together pushing a certain issue, whether it's, you know, new equipment because the old equipment's faulty or whatever. So there's power in those numbers. And I think that's kind of what FDIC is probably 80+% of the instructors. If you have that extra drive to be an instructor and to do that, you have a little of that in you. So I think that's why it was received so well, is because, I probably had 300 people tell me that first year, man, you were talking to me,
Yeah,
you know, and I mean, it's the reality. And once you, once you have somebody like in a position where I'm at that has the platform, it's like anything else. It's like I'm letting them know that they're not the only one that's dealing with this kind of stuff. And then that's a coping mechanism for them because they're like, oh, well, I thought he had the charmed career and like was the golden child and, he was
yeah,
battalion chief. And it's like, no, it wasn't quite that. It was a pretty messy, roadmap to get, to that point. But yeah, having smoke divers, having FDIC, having, a strong family unit at home and, coming from a strong family unit as a kid. All of those things help you face adversity and overcome it. And people ask me all the time, it's like, man, when they were doing this to you or you were going through that, how in the world did you come in to work and like still do training, still do like nobody knew anything. If we didn't know, we wouldn't know, if we didn't know the backstory, we'd just think, you were rocking and rolling. And I was like, well, I never wanted to let let the crap that was coming on to me leak down past me. And so it was like, I can control these four walls. I can control what happens in this battalion. But I really can't do anything else about all the other stuff. So let's make it fun. Let's care about each other, take care of each other. And, you know, it's tough to be that way when you're in a write everybody up culture.
yeah,
You know, they don't let common sense prevail. It's like, hey, there's actually a better way to handle it with this guy. This guy's not going to respond to write up. He's going to respond to feeling like he let me down
yeah,
versus, a letter of counseling or whatever. And some things, the big ones, you're late to work, you're fighting sexual harassment,
sure,
substance abuse, you have to follow policies. But there's other performance things that don't have to be written up. They can be coached.
yeah, yeah. One of the guys I just worked with, very young into the job, and he just started engineering. And my department's very different. There's no tested engineer or anything like that. And realistically, like a lot of our engineers are pretty much everybody's an engineer, and he just rotate through those things. And he's in his mid 20s now, and we're on a possible fire, and he's backing up, and he forgets that the front of the engine's just a little bit longer, and he nicks a mailbox. Right? He's never been written up. He's never been late. He's probably got the most positive attitude that I've ever experienced out of anyone in the fire service. And I'm not just blowing smoke. He's a real good kid. And I get to a certain extent that they got to follow some rules. But to hand him paper for that right away when he's already sitting in the engine he's just staring at the windshield feeling like, shit. It's like he's already bad enough. Like, I get you got to talk to him and you got to go through a thing. But maybe just leave it at that. And like, he's already thinking of how he's going to do better next time. And I get what you mean. Like, sometimes there is a gray area with those things.
Yeah, and you need to be able to, unfortunately, just societal thing. They took all the power. They took just about all the power away from the company officer, and we
Yeah.
had an internal affairs division. So, I mean, if something happened, even to the point of somebody being late, so the book says, here's what you do. Well, we still couldn't execute it without it going through internal affairs. So, I can't remember it off the top of my head now, but I think it's like first late, you had to do a late to work form and you got a warning. Second one, you got a letter of counseling. And the third one, you got a letter of reprimand. And the fourth one, in 12 months, you got a 24-hour suspension or a 12-hour suspension. And so to do any of that other than the first one, the late form, you had to fill out a complaint package, send it to internal affairs. Internal affairs had to investigate it and then come back and tell you what action to take, even though it's in the book. And sometimes between the guy being late and when you executed whatever it was would be a year or a year and a half. It's no good then,
Yeah.
you know? So, yeah, that's that centralization of power. And probably it's because somebody did something, somebody sent somebody home when they shouldn't have, and all that. But instead of dealing with that, they create a big system. And you need internal affairs, but internal affairs needs to be for the big stuff, like guys, rob a bank off duty
Yeah.
and get arrested,
Yeah.
shit like that. But late to work, they need to let that stuff be handled in the station, and then if it's not handled appropriately, then deal with that officer.
hmm I mean, I've been brought up in the fire service to believe that everything was self-governing until, it was really like, criminal or something. Even there are obviously things that cross that line that can't be self-governing, but for the most part, like, we were able to manage a lot of things at
Yeah.
our level, or maybe even just at a lieutenant level, and that was it. And it seems like,
Bernasini,
sorry,
Bernasini used to say he would hold up a manual, it'd be about this thick. He'd say, "You ever seen the rules and regulations of a fire department?" And it'd be like 300 pages of everything. And he'd say, "Isn't it funny that to function on the fire department it takes 200 pages of rules and regulations, but to get into heaven it only takes 10 commandments."
that's a good one. Uh, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we've just governed ourselves to too
It
much of
is.
a point
Well,
now,
that's
and
what all that is. It's all just it's liability, scared and covering your
yeah,
butt, and same with like the wreck. You know, most departments you're gonna hit a limb, hit a mailbox, even if it doesn't damage anything. Maybe it scratches. You got to go get a drug test. You got to go through the whole thing, and it's because something happened in the past and
yeah,
somebody was sued or whatever. But yeah, you
and
think there'd be some common sense. Just like you
yeah,
can look at something, read the situation, and I'm okay with the drug test.
sure,
But let's
right,
let's say the guy, the guy you're talking about, he hits the mailbox. This is his first time. He doesn't have a history of it. It's a mistake. It's an accident. You
yeah,
don't punish people for an accident.
yeah,
Like you counsel them and you may document it, but like you don't beat them over the head with it
yeah,
until it becomes okay, you didn't learn.
Yeah.
from that night. Now you've knocked over 7 mailboxes, dude. Let's get your eyes checked.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah, and like honestly, to my department's credit, they didn't really hang him up as far as probably they would have in the past, and they did do like he had to do training, after they gave him training to do, and honestly, the training, he was part of my crew last year, and like me and we had an acting officer that it's weird. He's supposed to be promoted. It's a whole thing, but that we felt like it was unjust the volume of work that they gave him remedially.
yeah.
And we were like, listen, he hit a mailbox, like send him through a cone course or something like that, but he doesn't need to go do all these extra things all over
80,
again.
80-hour EVOP.
Yes, like we were like, that's excessive. And luckily, we were able to poke enough and you say enough comments to the right people, and usually it works out. But to me, that's like the fire service. That's how we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to kind of take care of those things. And it's interesting how it's kind of, I don't know. I notice it here and there. Like it went really like hardcore liability culture, and we're kind of maybe swinging a little bit back, but not everywhere, but a little bit.
It's moving. It is. The needle's moving a little bit back to the center.
Yeah, and I think again, another topic that I want to talk about that I know you talk about frequently is that risk averse culture versus essentially we're here to accept risk, right? And mitigate risk, I guess, in a certain way rather than avoid it. And I've been seeing some interesting things out there where now there's like bring a chief to like classes. I don't know if you saw the search culture guys were doing that, and like
Yep.
what are some other things maybe that you've noticed that are moving that needle, as you would say?
Definitely the biggest thing is in the search area. Even though, and again, it's a bottom up movement. It's the firefighter rescue survey started by Brian Brush as a college project, and now it's become its own organization that's self-funded. There's no government money or anything in it, and these guys they're like, we tell, as the official government reporting, we tell people how many people died, how much property was lost, but we don't tell them how many people were saved. And man, that just really resonated with me because I had been preaching that for years in Atlanta, probably all the way back to the mid '90s, and I had the opportunity to sit in on a hurricane briefing as part of a statewide drill with the Coast Guard commander. And they introduced him. The Coast Guard commander came up and he briefed us on the Coast Guard operations. I'm commander so and so, so and so. I'm at the 4th district so and so Coast Guard office, and in year whatever it was, 95, 96, to date our units have rescued 346 souls. We have rescued 1,045 vessels, and we've seized X pounds of this drug, X pounds. I'm like, man, he started out saying how many people they had saved. I don't even know how many people we saved in our own department. So then that got me on a tear. It was like, we should document every save, and we should put a criteria on it, and that should be medical calls and fire calls. And so I got in a big argument with a guy. So like, a common basic EMT run would be you go to a seizure call, and the dude's like a whiteout, and you give them D50 and they come back around. My point was, had we not intervened, what would have happened?
Yeah.
If we don't come, what happens? The guy dies eventually, right?
Yeah.
That's a save. And you should count that as a save. And so you should be telling the public, your fire department saved hundreds of people this year. It doesn't have to be, we only looked at a save as somebody had no heartbeat, no pulse, and we brought them back. That was a save. Or we pulled them out of a fire. That was a save. But there's all kinds of saves
Yeah.
that you know it should be classified. If you did not take action, what would have happened? And that's kind of the way the Coast Guard looks at it. So I was glad to see that from the rescue firefighter rescue survey, and now there are over 4,000 rescues documented, and I actually had a meeting with them just last week, and we were trying to project, okay, the number of departments actually reporting the Google Analytics news stories that they're finding and documenting is that we actually think the real number is that there's 10 people a day saved from a fire. That's just from a fire, not all the other stuff. So that fire departments in the United States are pulling and rescuing 10 people a day. And that's an estimate
Sure. Yeah.
because not everybody's participating, but there's enough data now to kind of draw that conclusion. And so I think that has put a lot of pressure on the whole, you don't go inside the structure, you fight fire from the outside until you got, you know, 4 people assembled or 6 people assembled. You can't do this until this is in place. You got to have a water supply. And so when you have hard data in front of you that says if you remove a person from that structure within 2 minutes of your arrival, not a response time, it's based on your arrival, and that could be different all around. So this is an average of from arrival that they have like a 78%
Yeah.
chance of survival. Then you go to 3 to 4 minutes or 2 to 4 minutes, and it's 72, or and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it's in the 70s.
Yeah.
And then the longer it goes, the further that goes down the line. So you think about a 10 to 15 point swing over a matter of 2 to 3 minutes. That's a lot of potential life saved. And that's why we exist. So if we're not focused on that, then why are we there? And so that whole culture that was like the firefighter first, it's so misinterpreted and so misused out of ignorance that I don't think it initially started bad because it was kind of like, hey, like watch out for yourself. Don't just run in there.
Yeah.
Do a size up. All of that. That's all fine. But it went so far that again, it became the liability game. It's like there was this, I mean, we've seen it on social media posts in the last couple of weeks with the LA stuff is like it almost instilled this culture is like you didn't start the fire, so therefore you should not risk anything. If somebody's trapped in the fire, they got themselves in that situation, and that is totally counter to the mission and vision of what the fire service is and was established for.
Yeah.
It was established for people to take risk to save somebody else. And it doesn't mean reckless risk. It means that you manage the risk. And I mean, why do you spend $1 million on a fire engine, $10,000 equipping a firefighter with turnout gear and SCBA, not to count a $6,000 radio and a $10,000 thermal imaging camera, and then not let them use it? I mean, we're not the public. And then what really makes you sick is you have all of that equipment, you're not allowed to use it, and then the police officer in polyester opens the door and makes the rescue while you're doing all your bullshit, setting up
Yeah.
this and getting this safety in place and all. It's like you got to have a reset and remember why you're going there. You know, and that's you know, I love Justin and the search culture group so much is because they're not reckless. They're not reckless at all. They are highly educated and trained and practiced to do the things that they do to mitigate the risk to give the victim the best chance of survival.
Yeah.
And there's people against the warrior mentality, but they confuse the warrior mentality with the reckless mentality. And it's two different things. A Navy SEAL has a warrior mentality, and they're experts at what they do. They're surgical, they're precise, they calculate the risk. And yeah, in a firefight, they charge and that's time for the bravery and all. When you're in an operational sense, though, they don't just charge. If they can get in without firing a shot and make a rescue, that's what they want to do. They're not looking to fire a shot. They're looking to be so smart and so calculated they don't have to fire a shot. But if they do, then by God, they're ready to roll.
Yeah. I mean,
And we need to have that mentality. It's like, all this stuff about, the when your house is on fire, people want to see this kind of person or that kind of person. They don't give a shit. If you're drowning in a lake, you don't care whose hand reaches down to grab you. If you're unconscious, you don't care who's doing CPR on it. You want the most confident, competent person who actually cares and wants to help to be the one that rescues you. And, so that doesn't get misinterpreted, make no mistake, there are people in every single walk of life, religion, race, sex, creed, whatever, that can do that.
yeah.
But there's also people in every single category that cannot do that. And the fire service should not have an obligation to check boxes to hire to meet some fictitious script. It should be easy. It's easy. You have a standard. That standard has to be legitimately vetted. So you don't need a standard that says, a person should be able to throw a 40-foot ladder by themselves. Okay. There's probably people that could do that, but like that's not a norm. All right. But whatever the standard is that you come up with that's legit, you just hold that standard and you go out and find people that can meet that standard, and then you have a good organization. If you lower the standard, you screw everybody and you hurt any cause that you're trying to affect. And and then the worst thing is the people that you have on the job currently can't meet the standard. And so you allow them to continue. So that hurts you when you try to enforce a standard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty simple. It's pretty simple. And I think we're returning to it. I remember when they did away with the physical fitness standard in Georgia, and the people that were getting hired it was just unbelievable. But the problem is you're not doing anybody a favor, because the folks that came that were so out of shape that they couldn't pass that old 1001 NFPA test, mile and a half in 13 minutes, walk the beam with a hose, carry hose up the ladder. It was a simple test that got thrown out because of ADA. Then we went to CPAT. But not everybody adopted CPAT. They had no standard at all for a while. Some still don't. Just to get your numbers, you took people that couldn't meet the standard and you invested thousands of dollars in them only to have them fail out 6 to 9 months down the road. That's unfair to the person you hired. It would be better to say, hey, you're not ready or capable to do this job because you didn't meet the standard. And then maybe they'll go out and do something to improve to meet the standard. And then you're good. So very complicated issue, but
Yeah.
It's simply applied and it works. It works with promotional tests. It works with everything. If you just have a standard and a legit one, don't throw some crazy shit in there that like only the you know, Hulk Hogan
Yeah.
can pass. It needs to be a standard middle of the road. Some people are going to be better. Some people are going to be a little bit worse. But like, okay, here's what the minimum is.
Yeah, it's got to be rooted in some fact or some
100%.
data. Like otherwise, it's arbitrary,
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember when I got hired as a POC, there was a guy there. It is had to have been early to late 50s. He was a volunteer fireman, and he came in 3 years in a row trying to apply to be a volunteer fireman. And they did an in-house because they didn't want to pay for anyone to go to CPAT. His name is Bill Brooks. So, Chief, if you're in here listening, I know Billy's awesome, and he I want to say it, and I don't my information's not totally correct, but I want to say it was 3 years he came in and he failed that test. And on the third year, like the whole department knew him at that point because he came in, kept trying to do it, and he finally, I mean, he passed it. He made it through. And
Like
it
Rudy.
yeah, it was kind of like a Rudy moment, I guess. And he was great. Number of years I worked with him, and but it was just always a funny story to hear that. Like even that was a standard, right? And he was not what you would probably consider the typical coming in. I mean, he was late in his life already at that point, where most people are retiring, and he was trying to get into it. And yeah, they didn't change the standard, and he just kept going through. Did I say? I'm sorry, Chris. If I did, I might have said the wrong last name, and I don't know why I just did that, but it was Brooks, Bill Brooks, and well, yeah, I just was thinking of that. And the other thing too, I'm looking behind you, and you've got Castros's book there, and
Oh yeah.
I think that's another huge victory back to risk adverse culture or the exposure to rescue survey and data. Like that's the most modern command book that exists right now, right? I mean, it only came out probably what 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
It was out at FDIC, so
Was it okay?
yeah.
So, but regardless, like not even a year, and that has data from that, like
And real life stories.
right,
So that there's context.
and that is a textbook to the point where we just did our promotional process, and that was the book we had to read
Yeah.
through. So now it becomes undeniable for people to know that those things exist. Like it's in the fabric of things now.
So, and I'll tell you how hungry the fire service is for it. We're doing something a little different at FDIC this year. We're expanding hot workshops into the week. So it's not full curriculum like Monday, Tuesday is the big days, but we have a few classes Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Mastering Command is a 4 hour workshop. I believe it's Tuesday, which is a pre-con. But then we have three hands-on labs with the same guys, like Astros and Brush and a couple other instructors, where you're going to have some, battalion buggies backed up. They're going to have the tablets and a scenario going in a location where you're actually rotating through, and you're the engine officer. So imagine like a blue card type scenario,
Yeah,
but you're moving around and actually, you're looking at the screen, but you're moving in a door or out. Sold out.
yeah, I imagine. Yeah,
Already sold out. As soon as it went live, it was like sold out immediately. There's still spots in the lecture portion because that's like a room that holds 150 or whatever.
sure.
But the 30 students per session that we allowed in that is sold out immediately.
And him and Brush are doing that together then?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yep. I'll tell you another funny thing about standards that was a good lesson is we implemented a qualification test for smoke divers, and we didn't always have it. We had a qualification test the first day, and it took up a half a day, and it was the old 1001 NFPA test. So we decided, on the shirt it says strong in mind and body. So we're like, we want people that cognitively know information and can pass some basic firefighter one type questions. So we had a written test, and then we had the physical agility test, which was push-ups, running, and everything was timed, hose drag and all that. And then your score is, if you do 10 pull-ups in 10 seconds, like that's max point. If you go 12 seconds, it drops down a point and it just keeps going. Same with the run. I think the best score you could have is like a 9-minute mile or something like that was max points. If you made it, the cutoff was 13. So if you made it in 12:39, you got 1 point, you know. And so for the written test, what's the standard at every fire academy for passing a written test?
70.
70.
Yeah.
Ours was 80.
Yeah.
The first time we ever gave that test, I think there was probably 400 people that applied to come and take the qualification test, and probably 150 of them didn't make an 80. They would make a 78, 75, a 70, whatever. And we'd say, sorry, that's the first thing we give you,
Yeah.
and see who's going to stay. And some of the instructors even were kind of like, because it was their guys, like they're bringing guys from their department to come, and they're going to smoke divers, and they're like, hey, everything's 70. Like, should we be kicking these guys out if they make a 78? Like, and I'm like, yeah. They're like, why? I said, because this is a different kind of class, and the standard is 80. I said, personally, I think that's low. But I said we'll stick with 80. So there was some grumbling and all. But what happened is there was consequences to not making an 80. So those 100 plus people that didn't make it went back. And guess what? When we gave it the second time, it was only 20 or 30 people that didn't make it. And then when we gave it the third time, it was only 5 or 6 people that didn't make it, and now it's sort of balanced out.
Yeah.
So it's proof that if you raise the bar, people will come up to the bar. If you don't and you keep lowering it, then people will go down with the bar. So it's a good little lesson in human nature.
Yeah. I mean, what a great. I mean, it's not even like the fire service, like on shift type stuff. Like that's your program, like
Right.
over there. Like that's a great parallel to that. And yeah, eventually people. I mean, if anything, those people that didn't pass, they're still getting a lesson, obviously, out of it too. Right.
Yep.
So either they're going to want to show up and do it again, or they're not. And if they want to, well, they're going to bunker down and do what they need to do.
Yep. It's a good filter. And there's people that have tried out, sometimes people try out 3, 4, 5 years to get in, and then they get in and they're not successful. Then they got to go all the way back through the process. So those people that end up making it are truly, salt of the earth. They learn more than the person that's 20 years old, comes through
Yeah.
and tears it up. They're physically and, sometimes we say too dumb to quit. They get something out of it, but they didn't have the adversity. It was tough, but they didn't have the adversity of the journey.
Yeah, well, I think that there's definitely something to be said about that, which I think adds to what you do with having a test and those things. I know you guys do Writ Under Fire with FDIC, and I've taken the full class, and like obviously it's not the same as Georgia Smoke Divers is. There's no test in, there's none of that other stuff, but I do notice a parallel with that where maybe the young, like, hyper athletic person that comes in and maybe had just gotten hired and was just doing a whole bunch of team sports and those kinds of things, and they're a great asset. It's not that they're not, but then you kind of, like, I was 30, maybe 31, I think, when I took it, and you have enough life at that point. And I think that you just kind of look at the other guys that are that age, and everyone's kind of, when you get into that like fourth day of that class, you get who's really got that extra little oomph, where it's not just physical challenge, it's mental, it's problem solving, and it's cool to see that classes and different types of things like Georgia Smoke Divers can pull that out of people. Or like that one bad tour that Basil's doing, like those are all awesome things. I love to see those become larger and more widespread,
And it's a
especially.
shame. It's really a shame that we have to do those on our own.
Mm,
You know, most of those classes are not, with the exception of Red Under Fire is an academy class, which is awesome. That's a phenomenal institution there.
yeah,
But all of these other things that are beyond the minimum are private.
yeah. But honestly, I think that there's something to that. Like,
No, it's good. It's
right?
good. It's a shame, but it's good
Yeah,
because what it says is there are people out there that care enough to make it better despite the bureaucracy.
yeah. Like,
And there's people willing to get it because, I mean, it's so hard to get in a smoke diver class, even with 3 programs. I mean, we're getting 500 applications for 40 spots,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. It's very competitive. Yeah, and even RIT, like, they added some, but now, like, IFSI lost federal funding, and they cut a bunch of budget. So now, like, those used to be free
Hmm.
for Illinois firefighters, and they're not
Yeah.
anymore. And so there's a
Yeah.
big loss with that. And I think that almost now breeds a, well, okay, well, if you're not going to give us what we need, then we're going to go do it ourselves, and that's where cadres form, and that's where that stuff comes from. And um, life finds a way, and like, and I think the fire service is doing that right now. Maybe one day those things will all connect together, and everybody will be able to share some form of funding or resources. But for now, like, it's okay that everyone's got their own islands. They just talk to each other.
Yeah. Yep. That was the Become the Revolution speech.
Yeah, absolutely it was. And speaking of which, like, uh, what I'm noticing now with the fire service is that revolution is really taking off even farther. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit. I know you guys had revamped Firefighter Nation, and that's kind of become like another resource out there. And I don't know, and I could be wrong, and maybe this is not what you guys were going for, but it really seems like that's becoming like the outlet for, like, the younger firefighter who's not well known, who's kind of getting out there and sharing their experiences, and to champion Preston Lyons is on there with his Relentless Rejects, and he's doing those things. Like, those are opportunities that I don't think would have existed in that same fashion. And it's cool to see that pivot happening in a platform for people. And was that the vision behind some of that?
Yep. That was it was a total it was basically had gone from fire rescue um to and then it was blogs for a long time and then it sort of sat there for a while and it was just really a lot of news. It was a place to put a lot of news. And so we saw that as an opportunity is that we had 1 month a year dedicated to health and wellness in fire engineering, and that's usually December. That is such a huge topic, and there's so much information that it's like we need to be covering this every month. So why don't we make Firefighter Nation the health, wellness, lifestyle, finance, leadership, camaraderie, and then let's bring in new voices that aren't the same old, and we joke about it because they're legends and and you want them there, but let's fire engineering is established. It's a tactical magazine. It's about tactics. Yeah, we get into a little leadership here and there. We get into some health and wellness, but for the most part, it's engine company, truck company, technical rescue. It's a technical, tactical magazine. The other stuff is equally important, and there's so much in research and prevention and just the whole shift in generational work-life balance and stuff. It's like, let's give that generation the platform to be able to discuss those, not excluding some of the more distinguished gray mustached
Sure, yeah.
individuals like your your Mike and Ann Galliano on
Yeah,
relationships. They have value
they
to the
absolutely do.
20 and 25-year-old,
Yes.
but there's also people that want to hear the message from somebody closer to them. It's one of the reasons I stepped back out of the leadership role in smoke divers. It's like I'm not in the fire station anymore. I'm not running calls. So I'm up there, giving you the business about your search and about this and about that. And there's some 20-year-old that's like, who is that old man up there like yelling at me? And I said, all right, well, let's get a younger, better looking, more physically dominant beast to be the one because it connects better. And you know there's new stuff, but like take search or fire attack or whatever, there's little things that change, but you need a new voice putting their culture, their experiences on it, telling the same stories over and over. So yes, it was very strategic in doing that. And it does a couple of things. It's connecting a new group. There's obviously a problem with people wanting to be firefighters now. And so it's trying to build that sense of community to say, hey, there is a purpose. There is patriotism and value in being a part of a group. And it's not just a place to go work for a couple years and move on. It's a lifestyle, and and again, it's voices so that everybody knows they're not alone
Yeah.
in whatever they're facing. And it doesn't have to be some, melancholy, depression or whatever. It's just like, do I want to do this or not? And then you hear from somebody your age or close, and you're like, man, that inspires me to want to keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, like,
So,
I'm fortunate enough where I got exposed to, an older generation, the fire service, I latched on immediately, and I understood that. And I
mhm.
have heard, firefighters younger than me, they don't resonate with like, Lasky and Sulka anymore, and
Right.
like, and that's a bummer for me to hear personally.
And so,
But like,
and some of them have never even heard of them
right, and
or heard of me.
so you almost
Like
have to kind of like trick them into going down that rabbit hole. And I think that trick's probably the bad word, but that's where so a platform like Firefighter Nation or something like that
the
can
word
kind of
is
get them in there.
the word is guide.
There you go, guide. Much better word for sure. Because once they're exposed to that stuff, then it makes sense. Then it's
Well, curiosity is the greatest
uh,
thing ever. And so an exposure creates the curiosity. And so I naturally gravitated toward the older guys in the department because I knew, okay, these guys know what they're doing. Now I was friends with all the folks my age, but like I'm listening to those other guys because they were the chief elders
yeah,
of the tribe. And I wanted to be like them. So I kind of had that. I think that's what set me on the right path. And so, however it takes to get the message out, to get people to look and get interested. I love hearing stories. It's like, man, you know, uh, my lieutenant was a good guy, and I finally got him to come to FDIC. We've been coming for years. And man, now that dude is just eat up. He wants to learn everything. You know, he,
yeah,
he just had to bring him to the river so they could drink.
yeah. My probie, we have a mentorship program, and my probie who got off in October. Um, Obviously, I couldn't make it this year because of my son, but him and I were going to go together this last year, and we're going to go this year. But it was his first time going, and he'd been a volunteer. He'd been worked for other departments, and maybe had heard it's just a cult kind of thing, and all those dumb like things that people would say about FDIC. And he goes, and luckily my lieutenant, who's going to get promoted to battalion chief here soon, went down there with him, and he eats it up too, and just showed this kid like what this really. And I don't even know if guide. You're right, it's guide. Like just let him experience it, and he paid his own way. Like he was all in, and his career and he's barely off probation. He's already doing so many great things, and experiencing so many things because he got to experience that. And I mean, he was an ER tech, he was an EMS guy, and he didn't really understand what the fire service was. And then, he goes to something like FDIC, and he's like, "Wow, I get it now. Like, I understand." And
Hmm.
it came to a point where we make our probationary guys do a project on like the future of the fire service, and he did it on the head nozzle, and we were at firemanship at one of the hospitality nights, and Ray's over there. He's like, "Oh yeah, it's some be kind of cool if I went over there and asked him. I had some questions about that nozzle." I go talk to him. He's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "Go talk to him. That's the point in this. Like,
That's
that's
why
the
he's
point.
here.
Yeah, you could do the same thing at FDIC. Like, that's the point." He goes
Times
over.
100.
Yeah, well, yeah, times 100 for sure. And yeah, I had like a proud papa moment. I'd taken pictures of him like talking to Ray, and like like a full
Yeah.
circle moment. This kid had no idea about any of that stuff. Not
Yeah.
even
So
12 months ago.
the secret formula is you get them in a live fire class on Monday or Tuesday.
Mm.
You get them to come in to opening ceremonies and get a little fire and brimstone and some update. Then they go to a class or two with somebody they've seen that wrote or does a podcast or is known, has a book. You get them to walk onto that exhibit floor and see it's like going to the Smithsonian or something. It's just like it never stops. Then you take them out and you have a beer and the bagpipers come in the bar. If you can hook all that together, yeah, it's a cult.
Yeah,
It's a cult for good.
it is. It absolutely is. Yeah. I remember one year me and my friend, we both work in different departments now, but we followed those bagpipes around and bar hopped one evening and just went with them
It's
everywhere.
unbelievable.
Like it's a really cool experience for sure. I mean, unlike anything else.
Yep.
Um, we've kind of touched on some of these things, but I did want to also talk about feeding the next generation. We were kind of touching on that a little bit with Firefighter Nation, and I wanted to kind of get some of your thoughts on this because now you have a very wide net and the things that you see and experience given your position now. What are you seeing out of the youth of the fire service? What are you seeing out of the next generation? I would even say a generation after me, because I'm 15 years into this now. Like the youngest generation that's just getting hired and getting in. What are you kind of seeing out of them if you do get to see them at FDIC or other places?
Yeah, definitely get to see a lot when I'm out doing other events. FDIC is pretty busy. I see a few, but when I'm going around during the year, you know, speaking at different, whether it's a Fools event, a union event, an award ceremony, or whatever, and I'm very hopeful. It seems that the newest generation is much smarter than I ever was or whatever. They've been exposed to more things. They have instant access to information. The only problem I see is in the older generation providing that inspiration for them. And I'm going to talk about this at FDIC. That's part of my keynote is some of them are just coming in to get an experience for a couple of years and then they're going to move on. It's kind of like, I want to do this for a little while, then I want to bounce over and maybe do this. So it's not a calling, but it can be a calling. And what's been proven in the surveys is it's not the money, it's not the benefits that the departments keep throwing more. We got to keep people, we got to pay 50 cents an hour more than the next town. And there's a few people that jump and move around, but the vacancies are the vacancies, and the vacancies just move around from department to department because everybody's stealing each other's people. So you got to have a better intake process and you got to keep those people. So you have to give them a reason to want to be there. And the reason for them to want to be there is that they feel valued, they have purpose, they're actually making a difference, and they're not just filling a spot. If your department's just hiring them to fill a spot and not investing anything in them, not taking into consideration the things that they want to do, you're using them versus cultivating them and indoctrinating them into the culture of the fire service to where they look forward to coming in. They want to be there. They want to grow up in that environment, and they have purpose. And so you have to establish the purpose and not just treat them as a number or an employee. And that's the secret sauce, because all the ones I've talked to, and it's been documented in studies, when you talk to them, the pay is not the attractor to them. It's the purpose. They want to have purpose. And there's a resurgence of patriotism and community and stuff that's happening a little bit. It's just like the safety thing. The pendulum always swings. Military's going through it, for all kinds of reasons. But I think there's a good reset coming back again, to the center, just like the safety
Yeah, the
culture and the
invisible
search
hand, right?
culture. Hmm?
Yeah.
Nature has a way of correcting itself.
Yep. Yeah, it seems like that younger generation's very, very hungry,
Hmm.
and they're quick if
And
they're
they're
not being
portable.
fed.
They're portable because they don't have defined pensions.
Yeah.
I mean, I think of all the stuff, you know, had it not been for that defined pension, I don't know that Atlanta would have been able to hold me for 29 and a half,
Yeah.
30 years. Maybe, but there probably would have been other opportunities and places to even do more,
Yeah.
whether it would have been a training officer spot or a chief spot or whatever. But knowing I had that security, that kind of kept my generation, and we ate a lot of bad tasting stuff
Yeah.
to be able to get to that end road. But this generation, there's nothing holding them other than the leadership, the purpose, and the culture.
Yeah.
And 50 cents is not going to keep them.
I had heard something the other day from a younger guy, and it was very interesting. He had said, my generation, guys, maybe a little bit older than me, we get real bent out of shape about poor leadership, right? And I think obviously we know, we write about it. There's plenty of things about poor leadership. That's the topic right now in the fire service. And he said something interesting, and he's in his early 20s, and he says, it doesn't bother me. I'm like, really? How? He's like, I don't know. I've grown up with poor examples of leadership in almost every bit of society. He goes, I'm not even looking for it anymore. I'm like, oh my God. But that blew my mind for him to say something like that. And he goes, it doesn't even bother me anymore. I just come in and I make work what I want it to be.
Yeah. He's never had good.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know how good it can be.
Yeah. He just,
Yeah.
and so it
They're
never
numb.
bothers him. Yeah. He's
They're numb.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I
It's
never heard
sad.
that take. It is sad, right? In a way. And so then it's tough to almost then explain, like,
The only thing that's positive about that is his blood pressure's probably pretty good.
oh yeah. Yeah, he's nothing. I mean, it's not that the kid's without frustration, but it was just a really
It's a
interesting.
different kind of frustration.
Yeah, one of those just coffee conversations that came out, and I'm like, is your generation like that? He's like, I think a lot of us are. I'm like, all right, maybe that's, or maybe they just, like you said, maybe they just never been exposed. Maybe as they get up into things, they'll be like, wait, what's going on up here? And I don't know, but
That's interesting.
would have never thought to hear
That needs to be studied.
right. I don't even know how to go about doing that, but
All you people out there doing your EFO papers and stuff, you need to look at the 1 to 3 year guys and ask them if
Yeah.
bad leadership bothers them.
yeah,
And if we go too much further, another 5 or 10 years, they'll be like, "What's leadership?
I know, and so that's
What does that mean?"
like that's where maybe that's such a blank canvas that's the big opportunity, and that's where you do need to guide them as soon as possible, because before they get exposed to the bad things, and then they think that that's normal, or they already have thought that that's normal, and they're not looking for anything else, and then history repeats itself because they've never learned anything different.
I could see a parody song rewrite to the John Lennon song Imagine.
Yeah, I mean,
Imagine there's no fire chiefs, no officers too.
just a free for all.
Yeah, whatever. Que sera, sera.
I don't know. Myself and one of my, again, my lieutenant who's about to get promoted, we kind of had a half joke about that. And I don't want to get him in trouble because I don't know who listens to this, but it was more of like, yeah, I don't know. Like if all of them were on vacation at the same time, I feel like we would do that much better. Like,
Well,
maybe
that
we'll
was,
send them
you
on
know,
a
I
cruise.
guess I think every generation has that. Ours was big in the how do you put out the fire? You know, the fire square instead of the fire triangle. It was like remove the heat, the fuel, the oxygen, or the chief.
I mean,
So everybody picks on the chief.
yeah, that does kind of become the lowest hanging fruit, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Some are easier than others.
Some are definitely easier than others.
Some just toss you up softballs.
Uh, would you say that being rooted in purpose is probably the number one reason that someone would have courage to go against the grain?
Yes. Character, character, competence, and then that, you know, character and competence build trust with anybody you're around, and then yeah, your purpose, your focused, your mission is, you know, for the right reason. You're there to serve the citizens. That's what people forget. You're not there to serve the fire department. You're not there to serve the chief or whatever. Now, there's certain elements to that, but your reason for being there, for volunteering, for being career, for having all that equipment is to interact with the citizens in any way. And um, I say that all the time. It's like you should, if you're on the way to the grocery store in the apparatus, you should always be scanning and looking for an opportunity to act. It doesn't have to be a fire. It could be a flat tire. It could be somebody looking like they're lost or whatever. And you slow down. You go, "Hey, you good? You need some help?" Because maybe they're afraid to ask for directions. Maybe somebody's holding them against their will, or you know, you don't know what it is. But you should always be looking for an opportunity to interact and make a difference, and that's the purpose. The fires are the gravy part. I mean, that's like, but if all you're doing is waiting at the station for a fire, then you're not serving in the whole role. You're that's more self-serving because that's what you get your ticks on. It's an ego-driven type thing. And we all love the fires, but if it's really inside you to serve, then any opportunity to help is rewarding. Holding the door for somebody at the grocery store, helping an old lady put her groceries in the car, or you know, giving somebody a ride to the station that's broke down to get them off the interstate so they don't get run over. I mean, little stuff like that is like that's your opportunity to interact. And that's what the fire service reputation was built on. Who do they call? The freaking cat in the tree. Who do they call? And then now that it's like a full all hazards, the fire department is the default 911. If somebody's not shooting or stealing or chasing somebody, then it goes to the fire department. No matter what it is, a strange smell, a noise, a leak, a water leak, you know, whatever it is, goes to the fire department. You go and you interact. Um, you know, we talk about the lift assist or the get somebody off the floor, and you go to a frequent flyer and it gets frustrating at 2 o'clock in the morning. Then you go back at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's like you got to take a deep breath and say, this person doesn't have anybody. And what if that was your mom or your dad or your sister? You don't want to keep going there because it could compromise a more serious incident like a fire and a need for rescue. But you go until you may have to be the one to take the action to match them up with the right social service or church or neighbor or contact a family member or whoever. You want to get them out of that situation so they're not calling all the time or not tying up a $1 million fire engine with four highly trained guys on it. But at that moment, there's nothing you can do about it. So take care of it, you know, be kind to them, help them out, and then look for again. You're looking for ways to help. How do you help them out of that situation instead of just you know coming back every day and not doing anything about it? And some departments have implemented programs for that, specifically, and then some have gone even to like the medic cars and stuff that they don't send fire engines and ladder trucks on those type of calls. They send one person or two people in a car, to take care of that kind of stuff. But yeah, that's what we're there for. I mean, you're on the taxpayer payroll, so whatever they need is what you're there to do.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I just want to make sure that I hit everything that I was going to talk about in here. And uh, kind of a side question, because like I said, I do see that you guys are feeding or allowing platforms. Not for me. It's going to sound like it's a question for about me, but it's not. I promise you. If people are looking to really get into that world, right, of writing and
Mhm.
and contributing to the fire service in those platforms, what are some pathways for them to be able to do that, to share the things they are passionate about, and get involved in that way?
First thing is to sit down and write. And don't write with the idea that you're going to be the feature article in fire engineering or the feature article on Firefighter Nation or whatever. You just write what you know about. Write your experience, write your perspective, and turn it into us. And it doesn't matter what it looks like. Um, we're going to take a look at it and evaluate it. And if it's written horribly, but the concepts are relevant or thought provoking or whatever, we're going to help you turn it into something that we can use. So the biggest thing is just jump, you know, jump, send it in. And there's needs for technical 3,000 word pieces, and there's needs for 600 word uh, short form to the point deals.
Yeah,
And
concepts. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we need it all, and like I said, we have the staff and the resources to help you work through. And then it's like anything else. Once you do a couple and you get a couple of back that are revised, you know what you're looking for, and you start to adapt to that. And we let people have their own style. We don't, make them conform to a template. So you got some freedom to kind of write anything, and we have a place for almost anything. We get a lot of stuff, and it's very rare that we say no. We might say we can't use it like this. Here's what we need, and you may have to go back, and somebody may never come back with it. But unless it's just a story time thing, like one time at band camp, this happened, and somebody's just kind of telling a story. And every now and then, even that's okay, depending on what it's about. Um, so yeah, I mean, just do it. That's the biggest thing. Is
Awesome.
you just jump in and do it.
Yeah, it really, like I said, it seems like that opportunity is there for any voice now to really
I
have
would
a great
say
platform.
80 to 90% of our content is unsolicited. content.
Wow.
There's a percent that we're like, hey, we need something on this. Let's contact, you know, so and so and get them to do us a piece on this for such and such a month, or like now the wildfires are a hot topic,
Yeah.
so there's a demand for wildland content. So you're drumming up some stuff like that. But most of it, people just have an idea, they write it, they submit it, and it goes through the process, and then they might submit it for fire engineering, and we're like, this is actually perfect for fire apparatus and equipment.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that we have all those brands. We have fire engineering, we have Firefighter Nation, we have fire apparatus and emergency equipment, we have the Journal of Emergency Medical Service, we have the Wildland Firefighter site, we have the rig. There's all these places that we can use content, and then we have FDIC on top of that.
Which one's the rig? I don't think I've heard of that one.
It's just a micro site off
Okay.
of fire apparatus.
Oh, okay, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't
Yep.
know if I visit. I know that I've read the apparatus one for sure. I
Yep.
didn't
It's on the
realize there was a
website.
website. Hmm.
Yep. There you go.
Should pay more attention.
It's a lot of brands. It's a lot of brands and a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you actually kind of stole what I was going to bring up there with submitting things, was that there are so many avenues for it to go to you guys, and you can find a place for things. It really seems like that's a big jumping off point right now. Back to everything we've been talking about is the platform that the fire service has. Like, we know, the internet and social media and all those things can be awful for a lot of parts of society, but I feel like the fire service has taken ownership of it and uses it really for good in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a phenomenal way to communicate. And we brought in full-time social media folks a little over a year ago, and our accounts have exploded. We were kind of on autopilot because it's just like anything else. We have uh, too many things for one person to do.
Yeah,
And so when you're editing articles, running the website, handling social media, which is 5 platforms
yeah,
or more, it's like you're getting it out, but it's not like the volume if one person or two people are concentrated on it. So like if you look at the amount of content we're putting on there, and we're staying true to the missions of each of the brands. So like we try to put educational stuff on fire engineering. We put health and wellness and lifestyle and finance and all of them will get some news. Obviously, we're going to let somebody know about a line of duty death or a
yeah,
big fire or whatever, but their focused fire apparatus is going to be focused on specs and equipment and the newest tool and all that. So and then the social media is like we try to make a self-contained message, but if you want more, go to the link in bio, and then there's the full article.
yeah.
And so, you got the scrollers, and then you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then there might be 2 or 3 paragraphs, but then it's like for the full story because there's not enough room. So you end up redirecting to the website. So,
Yeah, that's a whole thing, and honestly, I don't do it with my thing here. It's a lot of
yeah,
work. I mean, that's
it
again
is.
why you get somebody to do it. It's
Yep.
yeah,
But it's where the generation lives.
hmm,
Everybody lives on their phone, um, or a tablet.
yeah,
And so your information has to be digestible in those formats. And again, it's the guide.
yeah,
It's like I mean, it's like fishing or anything else. It's like you got to know, and I don't mean that in the internet sense of pH fishing.
no,
I'm
I know what you
talking
mean.
about the FI
Yes,
fishing. Is like, you're not going to catch a fish if you don't have something in the water and something to reel it in with, and that's social media for media companies and for magazines and for it's like, hey, it's opened up now. So you had ads. So now we have an ad for an article, basically,
yeah,
with a social media post. the technical term is amplification for all you media nerds.
What's funny, my wife knows that she went to, anyway, she was a marketer, but
I, I learned these things over the last year.
when I first started doing this, she was like, "You need to do this, 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 and this. You need to make sure you do." It's like, okay, okay, all right, I'll figure it out. I know, but she's always been good about it.
I'm
But
assuming from the look of the toys behind you that you are podcasting from the playroom.
oh, you know it, Chief. I That's been part of my brand here. I was gonna throw the green screen and do the whole thing, and I was like, you know what? No, I think the first. So I do a lot of local people that like are in my area, and it's I don't know, it was just more grassrooty to just have my pretend Aldi that I blurred out so I don't get in trouble
Yeah.
behind me or whatever. I
You just
can't
need
give
a
my
couple
money.
kids running around in the background.
Yeah, I know. One of these days they'll probably be running around when they won't go to bed. But uh, I got one more, and then we'll go into those closing questions.
All right.
What are you most excited for this year at FDIC?
Just the expansion of the hot into the week. We've got a few new classes. I think that's gonna it's gonna do a couple of things. I mean, we heard it in the evals. It's like we want more hands-on training. Um, we can't cram much more into 2 days. So by expanding it out, we've done a couple things. Now you can't get the same classes Monday and Tuesday that you can Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But for that person that can only come Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday because of budget or whatever, they have the opportunity um, to to participate in something if they hurry because they're just about all sold out on those days. Uh, that and I'm excited. Last year we introduced the drill yard to Lucas Oil Stadium, and so there's training going on like that's free
Yeah, I
to
was
the
bummed to miss
attendee.
that. Yeah,
And it's not the same as going to a regular hot class for 4 hours or 8 hours. It's a 1 hour deal, but you're getting to actually interact with the products and get lessons, whether it's from thermal imaging companies or hose
yeah,
companies, whatever. You're actually interacting with those folks, so that's cool. Obviously, the education lineup is just again, we had over 1,000 submissions to get 200 classes, so it was very tough. But there's a little something for everybody. There's stuff specific to volunteer organizations. There's stuff specific to engine truck. We've got in the hands-on uh, workshop, which we started last year. We're sort of the hybrid classes where we're doing hands-on workshop. It's a little bit of class and a little bit of hands-on. And so we've got a rollover tanker
nice.
um, for a for a hands-on workshop with Lee Hollins. They're going to actually be doing hot taps on a gasoline tanker. That's where they're pumping from one compartment to another compartment. We've got a new engine company class where they're going to be out, pumping engines in different scenarios out there in the parking lot. I even talked the legendary John O'Connell from Rescue 3 that was in charge of all the collapse of the World Trade Centers. He was in charge of Oklahoma City. He wrote the book on collapse. He's with the Army Corps of Engineers, retired FDNY. He's teaching a shoring class, shoring at extreme angles. He's back from managing uh, hot classes to actually teaching again. And I mean, just if you look at that list of instructors, it's just incredible. I mean, there's 7 live fire classes, I believe. A lot of the stuff return classes. We got a swift water rescue component. It's not in the river. It's all pool work, but it's all kinds of like how to do CPR in the water, how to package and remove patients, how to set yourself up. So we got that group coming back. It's just, I mean, it's an amusement park of quality training. And then we've got Mike Champo doing the keynote on Wednesday, who just retired from FDNY and is known all over. We also have a book coming out from him at FDIC, which is his first 10 years of the back page. It's like a collection of his early work. So that I'm excited for that, and then I'm just excited to see the gathering of the folks that are coming there for a recharge, because it recharges me, it recharges them, and I love seeing the new people that like come up and say, I'm going to teach here one day, and you're like, yep, I'm sure you will, you know. And it's one time when I was doing the Hump Day SOS, I would put out a little meme every Wednesday. And during FDIC, one time I put out one that said FDIC, and it said Fire Department Inspiration Conference instead of Instructor Conference. Because it's like you come there to learn, but you also come there to get that little extra spark back in your pep in your step, when you go back. And you go back, and hopefully it lasts a few months before you get beat back down in the corner.
Yeah, but at least you have those few months.
Yeah, yeah,
You just got to plan it. You got to plan like a class or something a couple
that's
couple
it.
weeks after.
That's it. And there's plenty of conferences around. You can space them out during the year.
Yeah,
Go
this
get you
year.
go
Oh
get you
my
a little
god.
fix.
Yeah.
There's one every week somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a gauntlet this year of FDIC, firemanship, and Great Lakes Hot. Like they're all like right in a row. So
Hmm.
very fortunate for that this year. So well, cool. I mean, it sounds like a really exciting year for sure. So I'm looking forward to it. I know that, and I'm sure a lot of people are. So speaking of classes, what is the best training or class you've ever participated in?
Georgia
I
smoke
was gonna
divers,
say you're
without a
wearing a
doubt.
hat.
Yeah, it's on the cup, it's on the hat.
I feel like a lot of people do know about Georgia smoke divers, but and I know it's a long explanation, but maybe just a snapshot for people that don't know that are listening. What is Georgia smoke divers?
We say we make good firefighters better, and it's about overcoming adversity. It's about working in small units, leadership, servant leadership, search, self-rescue. It's very difficult physically. It's very difficult mentally. But there's been some researchers look at it, and it's all experiential learning. And you can say it's a place that you can come, and for the average guy on, Main Street Fire Department USA, in 6 days, they get about 6 years worth of decision making experience. And they're tested, their fortitude, their grit, their mental toughness, their physical ability. But at some point, you said it earlier about the mental part, and that's really what it is. It's stress inoculation, but it's stress function. It's it's learning how to go beyond what your body tells you to stop at. Your defense, you're learning to control your defense mechanisms so that when the crap hits the fan, you can hold it together and still function. And we give the whole, 1 in 100. 1 in 100 is the kind of person that makes it. Everybody comes out better, but 1 in 100 is the one who has all the right components. And if you don't make it, it doesn't mean you're not a good firefighter. It just means at that point in time, you didn't quite have all the components that you needed to have that ethos and that motivation and control of your mind and your body to be able to do what was needed to do. Some people come back 5 times before they get it. Some people never come back, you know. But anybody that makes it past the first couple of days and doesn't make it, they still get a ton out of it. And most of the ones that even leave on the first or second day when we do the exit interviews and evals, they say in the short time they were there is the best experience they've had. People aren't used to failing. They're used to participation
Yeah.
certificates of attendance. And failure is good. Failure is good as long as you're not setting people up to fail. If they're failing on their own, then that's the way you learn. And that's the journey, and that's the overcoming adversity. The beautiful part of it is not only does it make you a better firefighter and stuff, you rethink everything after the experience. And it's weird because it's not really talked about in the class, but we get letters from people 5, 6 months, 2 years down the road saying, "Hey, I came through smoke divers, such and such and such, and I just wanted to let y'all know the experience that I had there saved my marriage." And it's because they developed grit and the ability to communicate and adapt to adversity that got them through a life adversity, not just a fire adversity. Maybe they got a crappy assignment at their department for 2 or 3 years, and there's no calls. They were at a station by themselves or whatever. Hey, I just had the worst experience of my life, but I wanted you to know that if I hadn't come through smoke divers, I probably would have quit the fire service during the last 2 years. So we get that kind of communication back all the time. And so that lets us know that there's magic there in what we're doing and that it's okay to have a standard, hold the standard, and people will rise up to it. It's something to attain. And people are hungry for it. People are hungry for it. And we tell them first, if you're coming just for the challenge, like I want to go see if I can do that, you usually won't make it. You got to want to make it. And you got to want it like worse than anything else. And you got to prepare for it. And then you got to execute when you get there, because we're not going to let you skate through. There's 100 of us watching 40 students, which dwindle down to 20 by Wednesday, which sometimes dwindle down like this last class to what was it, 7, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds transformational though. Like
It is.
it's one of yeah.
It really is. It's almost a spiritual transformation in a way. It's the only thing to compare it to.
Well, and I've gone through obviously, but like there's growth in suffrage, like
Hmm?
and
Oh, you suffer.
right, like and obviously like what little I do know about it, like yeah, that's the point to a certain extent, right? And
Yep.
there's growth when you suffer, 100%.
Yep. To the point where, I mean, we there's no secrets about like, I mean, we don't lay out the schedule for everybody to know because that's
Yeah,
part of it is the unknowns, but there's no secrets we tell them up front. It's like, hey, this is going to be hard.
yeah,
And we're going to test you. We're going to get inside your head and we're doing things. We're going to keep you safe, but there is risk. You could fall, you could get burned, all those things are there. There's real fires, there's real hazards and all, but we're going to be watching out for you. It doesn't matter that you tell them because you get so worn down and into the moment that, you're going to places that you haven't been before. And then we're showing you how to function when you're there.
yeah, yeah,
And that's not something you can do at a drill at the station. That's not something you can do in a weekend class. It takes that 6-day journey to make it happen.
yeah.
And under strict medical monitoring. And I mean, we're tracking your calories, we're checking your hydration levels every morning. And I mean, it's very it's very well thought out and planned, and it you know it just makes you overall better aware of yourself, and that's one of the first things that I always told them, and the new folks tell them now is it's not us against you, the instructor against the student. The instructor is the facilitator of the journey. It's you against you in the class. And so, your little demons in your head telling you to quit or why am I doing this? I could be at home. Because part of it sucks, but that's how you get to that place.
Yeah.
And it's not torturous.
Yeah.
I mean, we're
Yeah.
not stringing them up.
Yeah.
It's really more mental than it is anything else. I mean, there's physical there, but most of the people quit because of mental. Most of the people are dropped because of physical, like that we have to say you can't continue. But the ones that quit, most of it's mental.
Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like an incredible program. Every time I hear people talk about it, I get goosebumps. It's just
Yeah,
one of those things.
it is. I'm very fortunate to have been involved in it. Like I said, I think that between that and being at Conyers was the catalyst that, um, it was the foundation that led to all of the rest
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. What's one mistake that you've made and learned from?
Only one.
I know you
Um,
got to pick one.
yeah. Say probably not not communicating well enough up the chain of command, like especially in the union president days. It's a lot of conflict, a lot of they wouldn't meet with the union president, and so it became adversarial letter writing back and forth instead of like and you can't force it all the time, but you know, uh, if I had some of those times to do over again, I think I would just confront whoever it was, whether it was the mayor or the fire chief or whoever, and say, "Hey, let's go to lunch," and just try to establish a little bit of a relationship before diving into the issue right off the bat, because sometimes you feel like you're under attack, both ways, and you just shut down. You build a fort and you don't let them in. So probably a little more strategic with some of the communication, definitely up the ladder on big issues when I was union president, or even as a battalion chief up to some of the stuff that needed to be addressed versus just saying in public or in a staff meeting or whatever. It's like, that's not going to work. Right or wrong, it may have been better to wait, have a private conversation, and then build some support and some trust. You know,
Yeah.
not that it would have always worked, but it probably would have led to a lesser amount of retaliatory stuff on myself.
All right. That's great advice. Have you ever lost your passion for the fire service? If you did, what'd you do to get it back, and what keeps you passionate?
Never. I lost my passion for department, but not the fire service.
I appreciate that disassociation. Yeah, that's a great answer.
Loyal, disobedient.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's what it is. If you wanted to give someone a sense of how fire service culture should work by meeting one person and experiencing time with them, who would it be? Alive or dead, doesn't matter. Who would you put someone that knows nothing about the fire service with?
Right now, Gosh, there's so many, but right now, because I'm around them a lot and they're helping me out, and I've known them for a long time and seen them, would be Mike Champa, the real deal.
Yeah.
Humble, extremely knowledgeable, and extremely passionate about passing on information, knowledge, and extremely passionate about helping no matter what it is, fundraiser here or taking, I mean, the guy, for 25 years, I've known the guy. Like, he's the guy that takes up the collection from the instructors to give to the housekeeping staff at the hotel at FDIC, to take up a collection to buy pizzas for the front desk. I mean, he's always that guy. So he's always looking for that opportunity to serve.
Damn. Yeah.
And if I didn't say it already, it'll be keynoting Wednesday at FDIC.
Yes, you absolutely you did. That's cool to hear though too. Even the little things about taking up a collection for pizza and like that man, that speaks volumes to his character. That's
Yep.
pretty cool. All right, last question. What's the best part of the job?
The people, the people you work with, for sure. I mean, that's the bread and butter. The people you work with, and working in a team environment to do good. There's no higher morale than 3 o'clock in the morning coming back after a fire. You're cleaning equipment, you're cooking some kind of breakfast, whatever you can find,
Pancakes.
and whatever,
That's ours.
whatever's there. Yeah. So it's just awesome. And the cool thing is like there's never a time where you're in need of something that you don't know who to go to.
Yeah.
Your roof leaks, call Bill. Your transmission went out, call Steve.
Yeah.
You know, you need uh, you need flowers. You need to send flowers to a relative's funeral. Well, Jim's wife has the flowers. I mean, it's just an unlimited network. You can be out of town, and it's like, how I'm broke down on the side of the road. Shit. Hey, I'm in Cleveland. So and so. You know anybody? Where are you at? I'm at such and such such that street. Yeah, I'll call the engine. Will be there in a minute. And I don't think there is another profession in the world that can even come close. It's like, I mean, the military is probably the closest, but like, I don't even think they work that well
Well, yeah. I mean, I
with
guess
that
the
network.
network's a little bit different. Yeah.
Well, there's they're spread out,
Yeah.
so there's definitely not as many bases as there are fire stations, but somebody knows somebody. It won't take more than two levels of phone calls, and you got help.
Yeah.
Your kid's in college somewhere, and it's like, oh, let me call so and so. I mean, I'm gonna give my kid this person's number in case anything happens, because I'm 3 hours away and they're 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
It is. Yeah. The guys at Great Lakes Hot passed a boot and bought me a new fridge this year. Like, because of everything with my son. Like
Yeah.
that stuff is just unreal. Like it blows my mind every time that you get to see it. There's no safer place to go to the bathroom on a road trip than a fire station.
Nope.
It's the same. Hey, where you on the job? Oh yeah, you guys got whatever. Hey, how many calls you run? Like it's the same stories everywhere you go, the same questions, and it's always welcoming. It's hilarious.
Yep. And it's pretty worldwide too. Even though, if you travel outside country and you see whether it's volunteer, paid, or whatever, the jokes are the jokes, the camaraderie is the camaraderie.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So yeah, that's the best part. The best part's the people. It's also the worst part
Well, yeah, I mean, but
at some times.
let's at least end with it being the best
Yeah.
part. Well, that was cool, Chief. I really appreciate you coming on. Hang out in the green room for just a couple seconds, but
Yeah, man.
yeah. If let's see, if anybody needed to get a hold of you, how could they?
David.Rhodes, Rhodes, at clarionevents.com.
There you go. Any last plugs for anything else happening? I know FDIC, but
Yeah, if you want to get your choice of hot classes, you better hurry. There a lot of the live fires are already sold out or close to sold out. Remember, we do have the workshops, and there is I would like to put in a plug for National Fire Sprinkler Association has sponsored a class. It's listed in the hot workshops for Thursday and Friday. It's free to anybody who's registered, but you do have to sign up for it. And it's modern fires and modern fire protection. They have a new trailer that you're allowed you pump it like it's a sprinkler system, and it adjusts the flows. They flow hand lines and show you like how to take control of these big box fires and use the sprinkler systems, the fire pumps, and all to your advantage. And that's something that the fire service is definitely lacking
oh yeah,
knowledge
absolutely,
in.
yeah.
So that's a new class, and again, it's free. There's 4 sessions. I think they're taking 25 per session, something like that. So take advantage of that, and then be looking for a schedule for drill yard activities. And if you're not a subscriber, make sure to subscribe to to fire engineering and stay connected.
There you go. Well, that's it. I appreciate you. Thank you so
All
much
right,
for
man.
coming on.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thanks for all you do.